Shabbat Shalom, everyone.
Shabbat Shalom.
We welcome everyone into Shabbat with words of welcome. Havenu Shalom Alechem. Let us all welcome each other. Havenu Shalom Alechem. Havenu Shalom Alechem. Havenu Shalom Alechem. Havenu Shalom Alechem. Let's do it again. Havenu Shalom Alechem. Havenu Shalom Alechem. Havenu Shalom Alechem. Havenu Shalom Alechem. Hine ma tov u'manayim shevet achim gam yachad. Hine ma tov u'manayim shevet achim gam yachad. Havenu Shalom Alechem. Havenu Shalom Alechem. Havenu Shalom Alechem. Havenu Shalom Alechem. Let's do it again. Havenu Shalom Alechem. Havenu Shalom Alechem. Havenu Shalom Alechem. Havenu Shalom Alechem. Hine ma tov. Hine ma tov u'manayim shevet achim gam yachad. Hine ma tov u'manayim shevet achim gam yachad. Havenu, one more time. Havenu Shalom Alechem. Havenu Shalom Alechem. Havenu Shalom Alechem. Havenu Shalom Alechem. Tag. Havenu Shalom Alechem.
Shabbat Shalom. Very nice to see all of you this evening on this kind of hot, almost Shabbat. I didn't mean to rhyme, but I did. Ooh. Here, it is nice to have you. For those of you that are new here to this Shabbat tent, let me introduce us and then a little bit about what happens here this evening. I am Rabbi Emily Hyatt.
I'm Cantor Liz Sachs.
This is Ken Mervine, our accompanist, and we are thrilled to have you. We've got a lot of staff in the back should you need anything on this evening. Most of them are wearing name tags, which is what tells you that they, in fact, are a part of the amazing professional team here at Temple Emanuel. Should we need some things, here's some of what's on the table. If you need to use the restroom, if you go that way and you see the big doors, you're going to go in the big doors. And inside the big glass doors, you'll go straight, and there will be restrooms. Should we need to go inside for any kind of emergency, inclement weather, or whatever else, we're going to go inside those same doors, and then we'll be inside and not outside, and it will be great. If you would do me a favor and silence your cell phones. We love to have you participate in our services. Your cell phones don't need to participate. So if you would put them on silent, we would appreciate it. And finally, up above you by these lights, there are some cameras. If you would turn around and wave hello and Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.
And say hi to all of the people who are joining us from afar. We're so grateful and lucky to have technology that allows us to gather together.
So we have some special guests here tonight. Raise your hand if you are a Meals and Mitzvah family joining us for the very first time on a Friday evening.
Woo!
Hooray! So our Meals and Mitzvah families are our families who are in the process of becoming B'nai Mitzvah. They are learning all about big Jewish questions, and they're joining us for services tonight, and we'll have an experience following the service with dinner and some really excellent learning by Kathy. Kathy's over there. Wave. Hello. So as soon as the service is over, grab some ice cream if you want as a pre-dinner treat. Shh. Don't tell. And you can follow Kathy into the social hall. The other thing that you may notice if you are a Shabbat regular is that we are doing some different music this evening. Our next Shabbat is our new member Shabbat, where we will welcome literally hundreds of new members into our community. And to celebrate them, we have invited the band Sababa, featuring our very own Steve Brodsky, to be part of our service and perform in a concert afterwards. As a result, we're warming ourselves up with some of their music, some of which you know, some of which may sound a little less familiar, like the opening song that we just sang. So we'll be doing that throughout the evening so that next week we can sing with gusto and very much impress all the new members of our congregation about what a wonderfully musical congregation we are.
One more thing that you might see if you look around, actually two more things. You might see that there are a lot of ladies here this evening. Hopefully, some of them are here because because they're participatory in our community in general and are going on our Women's Israel journey this December, our trip to Israel, and we are having a little schmooze also after services. So we invite you, if you are going to Israel, to stay. If you are curious about Israel, there are a few spots left. You should also talk to us. And finally, the last thing that you will see if you look around is the culmination of that B'nai Mitzvah program that we were just talking about, sitting right here up front, because Reagan Stone is having her bat mitzvah tomorrow. We are so excited to celebrate her becoming bat mitzvah. So I'm going to invite up her mom and dad, and her brother and sister to come and help us light candles so that we can bring in Shabbat.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu le'adlik ner shel Shabbat.
Mazel tov to Reagan and to all of you, and thank you for celebrating with us tonight, and we'll see you in a little while. You're going to come back up, remember? Okay, great. She's like, what am I have to read Torah tonight? Is it now?
Right.
And so with that, we are ready to welcome Shabbat into this tent and into this week and into our space and our souls. And so we sing the words of Lecha Dodi.
Lecha Dodi likvat kala penei Shabbat nekabela. Lecha Dodi likvat kala penei Shabbat nekabela. One more time. Lecha Dodi likvat kala penei Shabbat nekabela. Lecha Dodi likvat kala penei Shabbat nekabela. Shamor v'zachor v'dibur echad hishmianu el hameyuchad Adonai echad u'shmo echad l'shemo tiferet v'litchila. Lecha Dodi likvat kala penei Shabbat nekabela. Lecha Dodi likvat kala penei Shabbat nekabela. Likvat Shabbat lechu benelcha ki mekor abracha erosh bikedem yesucha sof ha'aseh v'machshavat tfilah. Lecha welcome our Shabbat spirit. Boi v'shalom atet b'olam, gam b'simcha uv'tzola, toch emunei am segula. Boi chala, turn back around, lecha dodi, likrat kala, b'nei Shabbat nekabela. Lecha dodi, likrat kala, b'nei Shabbat nekabela. Lecha dodi, likrat kala, b'nei Shabbat nekabela. Lecha dodi, likrat kala, b'nei Shabbat nekabela.
We remain standing for the Baruch. This is balance. The world is entirely consumed by darkness, then brimming with light together. The seasons approach, one after the other, bring unbearable heat, bitter cold, and everything in between. Joy fades, loss makes space for growth and new life. Balance is not a perfect blend of extremes. It is something that takes place inside a larger system. It is a perspective and awareness that makes space for us to fully experience winter and then spring, light and then darkness, darkness and then light together. Life of all worlds, thank you for giving us the strength to allow our world, our heart, to be big enough for it all. Baruch atah Adonai, hama'ariv aravim. Blessed are you, Adonai, who brings on evening.
Oh,
abundant, love unstinting. Our God, you have enfolded us in love. Tender compassion beyond all bounds, your precious gift. Our fathers and mothers gave you their trust, and you gave them Torah, laws by which to live. For their sake, teach us as well. Grace us with your guidance. Loving Father, merciful Mother of us all, grant us clear understanding that we may listen, learn, and teach, preserve, practice, and fulfill with love every lesson of your Torah. May learning your Torah light up our eyes. May our hearts embrace your mitzvot. Unite us in love and reverence for you, that we may never feel ashamed of our deeds. Baruch atah Adonai, habocher ba'amo Yisrael be'ahava. Our praise to you, Adonai. You have singled out your people Israel with love.
Ahava, olam, Beit Yisrael, Amcha ahavta. We are love, 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 by unending love and unending love. Ahava, olam, Beit Yisrael, Amcha ahavta. We are love, love, loved by unending love and unending love. Open up our eyes, teach us how to live, fill our hearts with joy and all the love you have to give. Gather us in peace as you lead us to your name, and we will know that you are one. And we will know that you are one. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Baruch Shem Kevod, Shem Kevod Malchuto, Le'olam va'ed. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. You may be seated. We chant Ve'ahavta together. Ve'ahavta et Adonai Elohecha b'chol levavcha u'v'chol nafshecha u'v'chol meodecha ve'hayu hadvarim ha'ele asher anochi metzavcha hayom al levavecha Veshinantam levanecha vedibarta bam beshivtecha beveitecha uvlechtecha vaderech uvshochbecha uvkumecha ukshartam leot al yadecha והיו לטוטפות בין עיניך, וכתבתם על מזוזות ביתך ובשעריך, למען תזכרו עשיתם את כל מצוותי, והייתם קדושים לאלוהיכם. אני אדוני אלוהיכם, אשר הוצאתי אתכם מארץ מצרים, להיות לכם לאלוהים. אני אדוני אלוהיכם. Amen.
Coming through the sea was only the beginning, the giddiness of walking through walls of living water. But the story doesn't end there. Now it's desert without a map. What if the next 40 years are bone dry and desolate? Maybe it wasn't so bad, that life, numb and familiar. Cucumbers and fish fresh from the Nile. Certainty, a fixed path. Now, hope unfolds its mighty wings, and every step risks failure. When I falter, remind me, I didn't cross the sea alone. Remind me that there's a mountain I'm heading toward, a promise that spans lifetimes of becoming together with you.
Eli, 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 Eli,
Thus it is said, Adonai redeemed Jacob from a hand stronger than his own. Praised are you, Adonai, for redeeming Israel. Baruch atah Adonai Ga'al Yisrael. We cannot merely pray to God to end war. For the world was made in such a way that we must find our own path of peace within ourselves and with our neighbor.
Together, we cannot merely pray to God to root out prejudice, for we already have eyes with which to see the good in all people, if we would only use them rightly.
We cannot merely pray to God to end starvation, for we already have the resources with which to feed the entire world, if we would only use them wisely.
Together, we cannot merely pray to God to end despair, for we already have the power to clear away slums and give hope if we would only use our power justly.
We cannot merely pray to God to end disease, for we already have great minds with which to search out cures and healings if we would only use them constructively.
Together, therefore, we pray instead for strength, determination, and willpower, to do instead of merely pray, to become instead of merely to wish, that our world may be safe and that our lives may be blessed. We rise as we are able for tefillah. Adonai Sfatai Tiftach Adonai Sfatai Tiftach Ufi Hagim Tehilatecha Ufi Hagim Tehilatecha Adonai Sfatai Tiftach Adonai Sfatai Tiftach Ufi Hagim Tehilatecha Ufi Hagim Tehilatecha Adonai Sfatai Tiftach Adonai Sfatai Tiftach Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu v'Elohei Avotenu v'Imotenu Elohei Avraham Elohei Yitzchak v'Elohei Yaakov Elohei Sarah Elohei Rivka Elohei Rachel v'Elohei Leah Ha'el Hagadol Hagibor V'Hanorah El Elyon Gomel Chasadim Tovim V'Konei HaKol V'Zocher Chastei Avot V'Imahot U'Mevi Geula Livnei V'neihem Leman Shemo Be'ahava Melech Ozer Moshiach U'Magen Baruch atah Adonai Magen Avraham Vezrat Sarah Atah Gibor Le'olam Adonai Mechaye HaKol Atah Rab Lehoshia Morid HaTal Mechalkel Chaim Bechesed Mechaye HaKol Berachamim Rabim Somech Noflim Verofeh Cholim Umatir Asurim Umekayem Emunato Lishanei Afar Michamocha Baal Gevurot Umido Melach Melech Meimir Umechayeh Umatzmiach Yeshua V'ne'emanat Alechayot HaKol Baruch atah Adonai Mechayeh HaKol Atah Kadosh V'Shimcha Kadosh U'Kadoshim B'chol Yom Yalelu Chasela Baruch atah Adonai Ha'el HaKadosh.
You may be seated. We take a moment now for our words of healing, for our prayers, for those who may or may not be in this tent with us, but who we know are in need of our blessing, of our thoughts, of our energy, of our wishes for their full and complete and speedy healing, regardless of why they are suffering. And so, as always, we pause in the middle for names, those we know, those you know, and those neither of us know, as we certainly pray for those in our country and around the world who we can't name, but we know need us, as we join together in words of Mishaberach.
let us say, Amen.
Today we are praying for Zachary Hoffman, David Karner, Jean Silber, Alan Davidson, Douglas Hamilton, Ira Levine, Leslie Rohde, Richard Seedroff, Betty Heller, Marianne Tiedemann, Mikhail Lerner, Frank Tepper, Susan Frisch, Alex Busnovetsky, Lori Goldman, Laura Culver, Carol Weiner, Jared Siegel, Peggy Lehman, Rebecca Zuckerman, Murray Unell, Sheila Rosenberg, William Bill Silvers, Sam Sherris, Karen Fodenreicht, Francie Bernier, Sheila Bluestein, Steve and Joanne Potts, Kathy Bragg, Vicki Sharp, Kayla Adler, Alan Stryker, and Skylar Hawkins. If there are others for whom you are praying on this Shabbat, I invite you to say their names out loud. For each of them that you have named, for all those that we did not name, whether they suffer from illness or from violence or from whatever is wrong with our world these days, we pray for them, for their healing, speedy and swift and complete. And we know that probably for some of them, there's what we can do to help bring their healing, and so we promise to do it. As we say, Baruch atah Adonai makor harafuah, blessed are you, Adonai, the source of all healing.
And let us say, Amen.
We take a moment now for silent prayer.
Teach me, O God, a blessing prayer on the mystery of a withered leaf, unripened fruit a blessing, a hymn of praise, as each morning and night you renew your days, lest my days be as the one before, lest routine set my ways. Lom Deini Elohai Barech Ve'itpalel Lamed Sivtotai Bracha V'shir Hallel Lamdeini Elohai Barech Ve'itpalel Lamed Sivtotai Bracha Beshir Hallel. Shabbat Shalom. You'll excuse me as we transition through music and singing and talking this evening. I have just returned. I haven't been here for a couple of weeks. Unfortunately, I had a tiny case of COVID, just a tiny one. The voice is coming back slowly but surely, but it's going to take a couple more weeks. So it may go in and out a little bit as we do our presentation this evening. So we are so excited to finally come to our third installment of our Women in Faith set of evenings. For some of you who have been here for the last 2 evenings, you know that we have been moving through the celebration of the 100th anniversary of the Bat Mitzvah and the 50th anniversary of women being ordained as rabbis. This is a momentous year, 2022. And we have had the great pleasure of having with us Rabbi Laura Geller, who was one of the first women ordained in the Reform movement, who gave us a sense of the history, followed by Rabbi Eve Ben-Ora, who was the first female rabbi here at Temple Emanuel, joined by Rabbi Sandy Cohen, who was one of our other female rabbis here. And tonight, Rabbi Hyatt and I are going to share a little bit of our own stories, but also weave into that an understanding of what does it mean to celebrate an anniversary like this. For certainly, it is important to celebrate the achievements of the particular women who helped bring us to this moment, and to celebrate the idea of women in positions of leadership in faith. But this concept of opening the door to women in positions of clergy actually creates a much larger impact and helps us think about what happens next. We have been blessed over these last few weeks to move through 5 decades of women in positions of leadership here at Temple. A little bit by accident, but in a very exciting way, each of the women who is going to speak as part of our series represents a different decade. We have moved through 70s with Rabbi Laura Geller, and the 80s with Rabbi Eve Ben-Ora, and the 90s with Rabbi Sandy Cohen. I was ordained in 2007.
2017.
So we actually have quite a nice overview of what it means to bring this impact here this evening. So I'm going to start for just a moment by talking about the significance of the 100th anniversary of the bat mitzvah. Before Mordechai Kaplan created a space for his daughter to celebrate her coming of age, women were largely left out of the ritual celebration of what it meant to become adults in the Jewish community. I'm so glad, Reagan, that you are going to become bat mitzvah tomorrow to kind of emphasize this point. It's not that our tradition did not recognize that young girls too became of age. The Talmud teaches us that women become bat mitzvah at age 12. But as you all know, there is a difference between implicitly knowing that we mark that and explicitly celebrating that moment in front of a congregation. Now, the celebration of this bat mitzvah led many, many years later to a momentous occasion for me. When I became bat mitzvah in 1993, which sounds very long ago to me right now, but every time I say that in the context of my colleagues, they groan and roll their eyes at me since it sounds so much later than many of them celebrated.
Not our colleagues, not me, but the other two that are sometimes
the other
up
colleagues
here.
that sometimes
Like,
live in this space.
The 90s.
That's right. That's right. It was the case that I was one of the first women in the conservative/Orthodox synagogue in which I was raised to become bat mitzvah with full opportunity to lead the service and read from the Torah. Many of you know that I was raised in a conservadox community, and when my family joined, they were just in the process. It was the first year of the process of becoming egalitarian, fully egalitarian. And I was the first class of girls to be taught everything about the service and given the opportunity to sing and lead from the bima publicly. So when I became bat mitzvah, I had the great gift of my Cantor knowing and recognizing that I gravitated toward this material. And he taught me pretty much the entire service, which if you have ever been to a conservadox service, is a lot. It's a lot. It is about 3 hours of material. You're welcome, Reagan. No, we don't do that here. But what was so important for me at that moment, yes, I was excited and proud to join the history of what this moment meant. And I loved reading from the Torah. I had Parshat Ki Tavo, which is a portion in Deuteronomy towards the very end of the Torah and is mostly notorious for having 66 verses of curses, all of which I read at my bat mitzvah. But what was so important to me was actually not the moment of, which was amazing and exciting, but it was the moment after, when my Cantor very gently and very quietly turned to me and said, "You know, you're quite good at this. It's something that you might want to think about." And I give Cantor Jack Mendelson, who is still here and still teaching and still creating a tremendous impact in Cantors of the next generation, I give him tremendous credit that he planted the seed and helped me grow it without ever pressuring me or deciding that that was the only option that I might have. It was just the beginning. It was a suggestion that he let grow and flower very naturally. And I think about what it must be like for other girls around the country at that time, what it must feel like for someone to have said that to them at that moment, and how that leads to where we are now. Now, if I think about that in retrospect, how does that play into what does it mean to have women in clergy? Well, the idea of bat mitzvah and helping women and girls lean into being part of their community in an explicit way really opened the door to ritual transformation in general. The bat mitzvah was the first very significant Jewish ritual that we radically transformed. That we said it may not have to look like the way it's looked like for the last 1,000 years. It can look different. And we are facing that right now in our own congregation as we think about issues of gender. And how do we retransform bar and bat mitzvah in a gender-fluid world? How do we think about opening the door for all of our young people to celebrate their identity, whatever they have decided that is at this particular moment, and love them for it? How do we help the ritual support them? The transformation of bat mitzvah has also opened the door to all kinds of creative other ritual opportunities, new life cycle events, life cycle rituals around divorce, around getting your first driver's license, around retirement. Mordechai Kaplan and the creation of bat mitzvah, rooted in tradition, but transformed to recognize the modern world, gave us the freedom to own our own liturgical creativity, and helps us imagine how we can continue to let Judaism support us as we move into the future.
So as we were thinking about what we wanted to talk about tonight, we kind of came across this idea that there are these moments that were really important for us, transformative for us, that we wanted to share with you, like the early 90s, and also to think about what's the lasting impact and what does that look like, moving forward. And for me, there's actually more of a gap than there is a moment that led to this experience that I get to have of being a woman clergy person. And there's a million things that led me to want to do this work, but the one that stands out to me is actually, it's the vacuum. And I've shared this a little bit in the last couple of years, that I never saw anybody in this role that I identified with, that looked like me. And I too grew up in a more traditional synagogue, and I don't know that I had very many rabbis and mentors and clergy in my life that didn't have facial hair. And that was really informative for me, because that's not me, as far as I know. There's a microphone aside, because that's not me, and because I did see them differently than I saw myself, and for reasons unknown, it never occurred to me to say, well, I could also do that. I just sort of never processed the fact that that was for a person that didn't look like me, and that men did certain things and women did certain things. And that's fascinating to me, given that I grew up in a home with a person who was like to say a feminist, I think would maybe be like an understatement. My mother was not only a feminist, but she was a trailblazer. And she became a law student and then a law professor when there were not very many. And she was certainly someone that said, I can do that even though I don't look like most of you. And yet it never occurred to me. And so on one hand, I stand up here thinking like, I wonder what it feels like to, a young girl who's like, look at those boots and hoops. We didn't plan that, but slowly look more and more like each other over the years. But to wonder, like, what does it feel like to look and see someone that might look like you, or that looks more like you, or that you can see parts of yourself in? I don't know. But the other thing that my mother always said to me that has stuck with me is that she used to say, women can have it all. They just can't have it all at the same time. And for me, that's actually the transformative part of this, is that I respectfully, Sheila, push back. Because I think that part of what happens, and you will hear us continue to say, opening doors. What happens when the doors are open and creativity is invited in is that perhaps we think about changing the shape of what is. And so when you are looking at a world that includes role models, people that you identify with and want to or see yourself maybe being like, and that give you this aspirational hope that you too could do something important, when those role models change shape, our dreams change shape, and the things that we imagine start to change shape. And so, interestingly, we no longer really have to advocate for there to be women in Jewish clergy positions, especially not in the Reform movement, but we do continue to reimagine what it looks like to live in a world in which our community is structured in such a way that we can accommodate the real lives of men and women. And how do we continue to push for that? What would it look like for us to say, Sheila, that's my mom, what would it look like for us to say, Sheila, maybe we can do it all at the same time? We just couldn't imagine what that looked like because the system wasn't set up for it. So how do we build a world that when you walk through a new door, it's different? And it's not about having to pick and sacrifice in the way that we know women have for so long. And to Cantor Sax's point, which also threads through all of this, it's not just about women and men, it's about all kinds of new and creative ways to be inclusive in our community. And when our leadership changes shape, we begin to understand that that shape can be even greater. And it's not that what wasn't incredible. It's just that we can include more. What does it mean when we don't look at clergy people and see only one kind of person? When we see people who went to school earlier and people who went to school a little bit later. I was, in fact, around in the 90s and also had my bat mitzvah in the 90s, a little bit later, but didn't decide to go to rabbinical school for a lot longer. What does it look like when you see people that don't live in traditional family structures? What does it look like when you see people who represent really different kinds of leadership? And so that has been fundamental in who we are as well. We've seen a shift that has been brought on by the women leaders of this congregation, like we no longer have maternity leave, we have parental leave. Because once you made space for it when you had to, all of a sudden we realized that we make space for it because we want to. We have flexible work structures in ways that I don't know existed in previous decades, because once you have to, you realize that you want to, and that we can make more space in different ways for all kinds of people.
So we've talked about how the open door created space for innovative ritual and for redefinition of leadership. I want to talk for a moment about how this open door and this welcoming of women into particularly the cantorate and the rabbinate, and the idea of hearing women's voices over and over again has impacted Jewish music and has really shifted and changed the way we understand what does Jewish music sound like, what is authentic, what connects us to where we have come from, and what connects us to where we are going. So growing up in a more traditional world, I did not hear women singing and women's voices singing Jewish music until I was much, much older. Every sound that came from the synagogue was male. And as excited as they were to teach me, every sound that they were teaching me was framed through the idiom of the voice of the male cantor. Decades of history and tradition of a really important musical history, but a musical history that was shaped by the male voice. Lots and lots of ways that registers how high, how low, how kvetchy the sound was created for a male voice. And as I grew up, I had to start to think about, how do I make this my own? How do I stop imitating what I have heard, and how do I reinterpret? Because as many of you know, right, women's voices are in a completely different range than male voices. What you hear sounds different. And to Rabbi Hyatt's point, when people say cantor, it is still the case that they almost never think of someone who looks like me.
It's the boots.
Fair enough. So what does that mean? Well, not only have women now spent the last 5 decades reimagining how to interpret the history and the tradition of what we have, because there is importance and gold there. I love the traditional music that I was taught. And for many of you who come on the High Holy Days, I still sing some of that music in ways that connect us back to our tradition, that ground us to centuries long ago and remind us that as a Jewish tradition, we are more than just this moment. It is important and part of who we are to have sound memory that brings us back and builds our soundscape. And we have also spent the last 5 decades writing new music, singing in different ways. Much of the music we sang tonight was written by women. Much of the music we sing on a regular basis is written by women. And it's structured differently, and it feels different to sing it, and it sounds different when the congregation sings it. And the idea of opening the door to women in the Cantor has led to a total reimagination of what is real Jewish music. What should it sound like? What should it feel like? And here at Temple Emanuel in particular, it has opened the door to musical innovation. Let's try some stuff. Some of it's going to be great, and some of it maybe we'll sing once and then never sing again. But it reminds us that in order to grow, we have to try it. It was very strange. And this is something that Cantor, Hyatt, and I used to talk a lot about because there are many similar things about the way that we each grew up. It sounded very strange when women started to sing traditional Jewish music. It was hard for a lot of people to hear it and feel the connection. And now, the point is, let us imagine not that women have to figure out how to sound like Kusevitsky from 70 years ago, who's a famous cantor who has a beautiful, gorgeous voice, but is a tenor, and I'm never going to sound like him. And that's okay.
Maybe like mid-COVID a little bit. You were there. It was really low.
Just a tiny bit. But what can it sound like? And how can someone hear my voice and the voices of other women and say, that feels like authentic Jewish music?
And finally, we have clearly said neither of us grew up in the Reform movement, so how did we get here in this beautiful tent, in this beautiful community, so close and so far geographically from where we grew up? And for me, that story really is rooted in an issue of gender. And when I decided that I wanted to be a rabbi, struggling with the way that other movements processed the idea of egalitarianism and having to sort of, for me, erase some of the gender norms that I had grown up with that felt comfortable to me, and the things that if I went into a more traditional movement, I would be obligated to do that I didn't know how to wrap my head around. And when I really investigated and discovered Reform Judaism, what I learned was about choice. And that is, I think, for both of us, a value that has called to us and that has been an open door for us to walk through and then to imagine what this could look like. And the fact that our movement was such an integral, foundational part of supporting this change and this openness that has meant so much to us, that is the foundation of the understanding that we have of what comes next. What's the path that we're going to walk down so that someday we get to celebrate 100 years of women in the clergy and 150 years since the first bat mitzvah? And what is it going to look like? Maybe the tent will be air conditioned. I don't know. 50 years is a really long time, so buckle up.
We can pray.
We can pray.
Hard.
There's
Pray
a lot
hard.
of things that we can imagine in 50 years will be the case, but what is it going to look like when the Temple Emanuel clergy get up 50 years from this summer and have a different 5 decades to talk about how they got to where they are? Maybe they won't recognize it. I don't know. Maybe it will be just so not a thing worth noticing, but I hope not. Because I hope what this all means, as we take this moment to recognize and to signify and to celebrate and to show gratitude, what I hope this means is that when we celebrate these anniversaries, that we get the chance to lift up all of the gifts that many women who came before us, many women leaders, have brought, and the struggles that they have certainly been through. It has not been an easy path to get here. But also to know that the opening of that door has had an impact not just on us, not just on women, but on all kinds of people who just might need an invitation. And so as we look back on the 4 stories that we told, we talked about being invited. We talked about seeing yourself in it. We talked about hearing your voice. And we talked about the values that make you want to walk through the door and say, let's build it together. And we know that those are very much going to continue to shape our vision of the future.
So I want to end this evening with some radical gratitude. Because just as we have thanked the many women who have come before us, who have put footprints in the snow, and who have made this road possible for both of us and each of us, I also want to thank this congregation. This congregation that has been tremendously open and excited and welcoming. And to thank this congregation that allows us to be here with you and for you every day. I want to thank all of the rabbis that have come before us here for the tremendous opportunities that they have given each of us, for their mentorship, for their excitement and their passion as they look into the future and see what the next generation has to offer. And so we thank tremendously Rabbi Black, who could not be here with us tonight. He is away with his family, but he sends his love. And Rabbi Foster, who's sitting with us right now, because we know that without rabbis and teachers like these, we would not be here today. So thank you. And we cannot wait to see what the vision for the future will be.
Shabbat shalom.
Shabbat shalom. And with that, we ask you to rise as you are able for Aleinu. Aleinu l'shabeach l'adon hakol, לתת גדולה ליוצר בראשית, שלא עשנו כגויי הארצות, ולא שמנו כמשפחות האדמה, שלא שם חלקנו כהם, וגורלנו ככל עמונם, ואנחנו קוראים ומשחרים ומודים לפני מלך מלכי המלכים הקדוש ברוך הוא.
You may be seated. Our thoughts now turn to those who have departed this earth, our own loved ones, those whom our friends and neighbors have lost, the martyrs of our people whose graves are unmarked, and those of every race and nation whose lives have been a blessing to humanity. As we remember them, we meditate on the meaning of love and loss, of life and death. And so on this Shabbat, we are thinking of all those that we have lost, those who have not yet been buried. Arnold Brodsky. Those who we have said goodbye to in the last week, Jerry Robinson. And those that we have lost in the last 30 days, David Freed, James Wolfe, Elaine Perotin, Julian Levy, Ted Kohler, Dennis Stack, and Gary Potashnik. And we join their names with those for whom this Shabbat marks a yortzeit, or the anniversary of the passing of a loved one. Eugene V. Alpert, Marvin V. Apple, Bernita Archenhold, Phyllis M. Baer, Sadie Rosenthal Bernstein, Morris H. Block, Rose Bronstein, Leon Brooks, Joseph Brooks, Ida Rose Cher Chappelle, Dave Cook, Carl Crumpton, Israel Dubin, Bertha Ehrlich, Hy Fishman, Sylvia Simi Fleischer, Louis Friedman, Robert Edward Glickman, Tova Tilly Goldfarb, Donald Gordon, Anne Greenberg Seff, Ethel I. Greenfield, Lynn Grego, Ray Grinspan, Sam W. Harris, Bessie Hayton, Joseph David Iskow, Pauline Kessler, Albert R. Klein, Maurice L. Kurland, Alex Levy, Doris G. Levy, Abraham Launder S. Morris Lubo, Adolph A. Marvani, Tilly Mayer, Mark Micklin, Robert Mintz, Felice Moore, David A. Nieren, Hazel M. Oberfelder, Diana Plotka, Jean M. Radetsky, Lillian Friend Ray, Jim Ritvo, Elias F. Schoenberg, Anne Greenberg Seff, Bernard Silverman, Dr. Myron Seaton, Marilyn Bassow Simon, Seymour E. Simon, Stanley Slavsky, Herbert R. Stark, Isidore Stryker, Margaret Waldapfel, Geraldine Robbins Weil, Jack A. Weil, Harry Wolgamuth, Henry Yuri Wolf, Janet Wanda Yabrov. And we add 10 more names from the city of Colleen for whom the Finer Chapel here at Temple Emanuel is dedicated. Ida Premsler, Ludwig Premsler, Dr. T. Rappaport, Ludwig Rappaport, Ladislav Redlinger, Richard Reichner, Riva Reichnerova, Erika Raisova, Hilda Raisova, and Nellie Raisova. And we recognize not just those names, but those that you are missing as well. Any names that we did not say for whom you are observing this moment of memory, and I invite you to say their names out loud. If you are in the first 30 days of mourning the loss of a loved one, I invite you to rise as you are able. If you're in the first year of mourning the loss of a loved one, I invite you to rise as you are able. If this Shabbat marks for you a yortzeit, the anniversary of the loss of a loved one, I invite you to rise as you are able. And now we all rise as we can, with you and for those who have none to rise for them, as we join together in the words of the mourner's Kaddish. Yitgadal v'yitgarash shemei rabbah, be'alma divra chirutei v'yamlich malchutei, b'chayei uvyomei uvchayei dechol beit Yisrael, ba'agala uvizman kariv v'imru amen. Yehi shmei rabbah mevorach leolam uleomei almaya. Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh. V'yithadar, v'yit'aleh, v'yithalal, shemei dekudesha brichu, le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata, tushvachata v'nechemata ta'amiran be'alma v'imru amen. Yehi shlama rabba min shemaya v'chayim aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. Oseh shalom b'mromav huya aseh shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. May the source of peace send peace to all who mourn and comfort to all who are bereaved. And let us say, Amen.
Zichrona livracha, we remember them. Zichrona livracha, we remember them. You may be seated. We're just going to do a couple of announcements before we continue with Kiddush and Motzi. So, Shabbat continues tomorrow morning with not only the bat mitzvah of Reagan Stone, which will be at 11:30 in our sanctuary, officiated by Rabbi Hyatt and Steve Brodsky, but at 9:30 there will be Torah study in room BC with myself. You can attend in person. You can join the Zoom. There is a link to click on if you would like to join the Zoom link if you go to the website. And then at 11 o'clock, there will be the community service in the Finer Chapel, also with me, so that you can come and pray. We will actually be marking at 11 o'clock tomorrow morning. It is Shabbat Nachamu, which is the first Shabbat after Tisha B'Av, after the destruction of the temple, where we start to think about comfort and love, and we start to walk toward the High Holy Days, which are happening in 7 weeks. We'll come back to that in just a second. Next Shabbat, Friday, August 19th, is our new member welcome Shabbat and Tot Shabbat. So we hope that if you are a new member here at Temple Emanuel, that you come so that we can celebrate you. There's a special ceremony that we do within the service. And if you are a very experienced member at Temple Emanuel, we hope that you come so that you can welcome the many people who have joined our congregation over the last year and a half or so. There will be Tot Shabbat as well, so if you are a family with little people, you will come with me and we will do some fun singing and dinner, and then following the service, we will have a concert featuring Sababa, which will be right out here with either a bring your own picnic dinner, or you can register for a barbecue Shabbat dinner, which we will be providing as well. So take a look at our website, register if you are going to come. In addition, our family camp, which is an opportunity for young families to come and spend Labor Day weekend up at Schwader Camp, has just opened for registration. So please visit our website if that's something that you think you would be interested in. It is 3 days of mountain fun. It's going to be a lot of fun up there, and each of the clergy will be rotating through and celebrating Shabbat at 10,200 feet. It's great. If you haven't been there, it's a really good thing to do. Last but not least, as Rabbi Hyatt mentioned before, Rabbi Hyatt and I are leading a women's trip to Israel. It is December 1st through 11th. Spots are filling up fast, so if you think you are interested and have not checked it out yet, please find the website or come and talk to almost anyone here tonight who can tell you a little bit more about what the trip will look like. We are very excited, and we will likely be taking about 80 women to Israel. So they don't know what's coming yet. 80 women from Colorado. It's going to be very exciting for Israel. And with that, I invite Reagan to come join us on the bima to lead us in Kiddush. I ask that you rise as you are able. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam borei peri hagafen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav v'ratzavanu v'shabbat kodsho be'ahava uvratzon hinchilanu. זיכרון למעשה בראשית, כי הוא יום תחילה למקראי קודש, זכר ליציאת מצרים. כי בנו בחרת ואותנו קידשת מכל העמים, ושבת קודשך באהבה וברצון הנחלתנו. ברוך אתה אדוני מקדש השבת. Amen. All right. Good job. Now we're going to do motzi. Here we go.
Got it?
Oh, there you go.
Pull it off. You have to like just flip it over. Ready?
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, hamotzi lechem min haaretz. Amen. We conclude tonight with a piece that is written by Sababa that we do sing here a lot. As much as we celebrate so many things this evening, we know that there is, unfortunately, violence once again in our home in Israel. And so we take a moment to pray for the peace of our home. For the sake of our family and friends, we all sing Shalom Aleichem. And for the sake of Adonai, we pray for peace again and again and again. Pray for the peace. Pray for the peace of Jerusalem. For these holy walls, let us sing Shalom. Pray for the peace of Jerusalem, the place that is our home. Shalom, Shalom, Yerushalayim. Shalom, Shalom. Shalom, Shalom, Yerushalayim. Shalom, Shalom. Pray for the peace of Jerusalem. For these holy walls, let us sing Shalom. Pray for the peace of Jerusalem, the place that is our home. Shalom, Shalom. Shalom, Shalom, Yerushalayim. Shalom, Shalom. Shalom, Shalom, Yerushalayim. Shalom, Shalom. Pray for the peace of Jerusalem. For these holy walls, let us sing Shalom. Pray for the peace of Jerusalem, the place that is our home.
Yehi ratzon milfanecha, may it be your will, God, that even as we stand here looking back and forward and knowing that we have come so far, the words of this song remind us that we have a lot of work left to do here in our home, in countries that are far away, in places that we care about, and in places that need us, that need our vision, that need maybe a little bit of an open door. And so we promise to open them. And as we walk to those places and do that work, God, we ask your blessing. Tatzidenu l'shalom. Help our steps be steps of vision and peace. Tadrichenu l'shalom. May our paths be paths that lead us to peace as we walk together. And we all say, Amen.
Please keep safe our home. Please keep safe our home. We pray for Shalom. Shabbat Shalom.